Cannabis is changing fast, so you don't have time to waste. MJ BizCon gives you the tools and the connections that you need to survive and thrive in 2023 and beyond. Join us in Vegas, November 15th through the 18th, and you'll find 35,000 power players in cannabis, 1,400 vendors who will fuel your growth, and fact-based insight on election results, growth projections, regulatory reform, and business management. It's your one real shot to gain a competitive edge in cannabis. So you get your tickets today at mjbizcon.com and get 10% off using promo code PODCAST. That's mjbizcon.com, promo code PODCAST, and we will see you there.
And so if you want something for relationships, the love languages is best. And then you want in-depth understanding across all of them, then the 16 personalities or Myers Briggs is best. Kind of rounding back to our CBDA, people take it again for anxiety and sleep and depression and things often related to your job or your relationships or how you feel about yourself. And it's always going to be good for all those things. But if you can learn your personality types, you have then taken away a lot of the stress in your life. So the website is understand.me.
Welcome to the Miracle Plant Podcast, the show that inspires, promotes, and gives you a daily dose of inspiration from the people who have used cannabis to change their lives in extraordinary ways. Here's your host, Justin Benton.
Welcome back to the Miracle Plant Podcast, where we discuss this miracle plant with so many names and how it's helping people in so many extraordinary ways. Well, as I was talking with Dan here before we went live on Clubhouse at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning Pacific, it's just wild, this ride that we've been on, how the whole world changed in March of 2020, and our mission to reach 1 billion people by 2025, it had a certain trajectory before March of 2020. And then after March of 2020, we needed to readjust our sails, and the wind shifted on all of us. And so we were much more in the physical world, and then things became so much more online dependent. The stat I've said many other times is the average the Americans that were shopping online primarily before March of 2020 was 17%. After March of 2020, that number has tripled and quadrupled. So if you're not selling your goods, your services, your products, your offerings online, if they can't find you online, you are absolutely missing the boat. So we aligned with the best of the best marketers, the best people that teach us how best to sail in this new blue ocean, this new world that we find ourselves. And Russel Brunson is the mentor that we chose. And over the past few months and years, we've done some amazing things with Russell, and some of you have heard about some of those things on the podcast. And in fact, I probably should invite him to come on. We'll have to have him on here pretty soon. But today, here's how this partnership has grown. He is launching companies, he's buying companies, he's the funnel king, as everyone knows him as, the sales funnels, the CEO and founder of ClickFunnels. He is launching another company. Imagine that. Because he's mastered the online game so well that he can buy companies and plug them into his system, or launch new companies and plug them into his system, and know how to make them profitable right away without getting venture capital. And so he's launching a new company called Understand.me. So if you go to Understand.me, you will see this new company that he's launching. And it's all about personality assessments. It's all about personality profiles. It's got all of the major ones that you've heard of, and maybe some that you haven't. And basically, you're taking all of the personality assessments to best understand yourself, to find your insights, to know what makes you tick, to know what your strengths are, to know what maybe things that you could work on, or hire somebody to actually do those kinds of things. Like for me, I'm obviously a big picture person, a visionary. I like to start things, but then I need someone to come in and help make sure all the details are being done and all the little buttoned up things need to happen, and basically closing those loops. And that's what I learned when I started taking these tests at Understand.me. Well, also the partner that's launching Understand.me is Mandy Keene. And I invited her to join us today, but unfortunately, she's so good at what she does, and she really focuses on the disc profile, is that one of the number one things that she teaches people is how to recharge their batteries. So she's up in the mountains right now with her girlfriends having some R&R, and she's really good about self-care and making sure that her batteries are totally full. So anyways, Mandy reached out to me and put it out there into the universe. She needed an expert to teach about Myers Briggs, which is by far the most complicated, but also the most well-used. Even 80% of the top Fortune 500 companies still use it to understand their employees, to hire their employees, and to make sure people are aligned with the positions and the communication within the culture is at its peak levels. And so Mandy put it out there, I need a Myers Briggs expert. And then I wrote back to her, I said, well, I have an expert that I know very well, who's been, who's given over 10,000 personality assessments over the decades, and is the researcher, psychologist, retired, but has done so many amazing things with understanding people and understanding people how best to help them, understand themselves. So I threw it out there that my mom would love to come, and so Mandy hired my mom to come out and speak in front of the inner circle at Russel Brunson's mastermind this week out in Boise, Idaho, and it was an amazing presentation, and there's going to be a lot more that comes from it. So with no further ado, Janet Benton-Gailard, my mom, can talk all about this new company, Understand.me, that she was hired to be a presenter and likely a coach and a certifier in the future, and talk about how we can talk about the subject that most people find most interesting. The most interesting subject in the world is yourself. So we'll take it away, Mom.
Thank you. Yes, it is exciting. And at first I wasn't quite as excited when Justin told me that I was going to be talking to Boise again in a large group of all the multimillionaires and the 2 Comma Club of billionaires. And I was also in the middle of a road trip I was taking with my daughter cross country. So it was interesting. But it's very exciting to be there. And by the way, the people that are the entrepreneurs, or they call them the crazy 1%ers, they call themselves, are a very unique group. And so it's very exciting to meet these people and see some of their scores and analyze them to see what makes these people turn into the multimillionaires and the billionaires, what type of people follow Russell, because they are often a very passionate group that have their own causes they're trying to present. And so it's not just a run-of-the-mill businessman who tends to be more, quiet type that's sitting there doing the facts and things like that. So it was great, and I could tell right away when I got on stage, they all stood up and everybody claps and they cheer everything, and they do that for each other also. And so that's another sign too from talking to other groups I've talked to over the years. So you can tell right away these people are different. They're carrying they want to make everybody feel good. So again, too, one of the most interesting things is Justin had gone to that site, Understand.me, and shared some of the profiles of the people in that group. And so I could get a data. I could get my data and then analyze it from that selection to see who they were. And so that was really exciting to find out exactly who I was talking to and what a unique group it takes to make millionaires and billionaires. And so I thought that was fascinating. And as Justin mentioned, there is nothing more fascinating since the time we're little than ourselves. I remember, especially when kids get into their teens and college years, you just want to know what makes me tick and other people tick. And so the test that I spoke on is the Myers Briggs. And then also on the actual Understand.me website, there is a test called 16 Personalities, which is based on the Myers Briggs. And so they made that test to try to make it more accessible to people and easier to understand. And so when you go to the Understand.me, instead of Myers Briggs, you would take the 16 personalities. Because of Myers Briggs, you end up with 16 results of 16 personalities. And so again, too, it's very exciting. I'm going to just do a brief overview of the different parts, the different types of things a test like this looks at with you. And the whole big reason to actually take a test like that is to understand yourself better and then understand your job better. Are you in the right job? What can I do to get in the right job? How do I work with people at work once I kind of know who they are? And then actually even closer to our hearts is who are the people we have relationships with? What are they like? How do I interact with those types of people? And if I'm married or in a long-term relationship, I'm not going to go leave it and go find a better match. I'm going to figure out how can we adjust according to how different we are and what areas we need to be aware of. And to me, if you don't take any kind of personality test or kind of look deep dive into these sorts of things, it's a hit or miss. And often if you're in a hit or miss job or hit or miss relationship that isn't meant for you, or if you don't understand yourself and what you need, that's when you end up with things that we work with then at 101 CBD. And so CBD can help with some of those things like anxiety, worry, sleep, doubt, all those things. But if we can get to the core of some of the reasons that are causing them, and often it is a mismatch between your personality and then the personality of people at work or on your job or in your family. And so it literally does help you understand and help you have an easier and better and more productive and happier life. And so those are big promises, but truly, as a psychologist working with people, it makes a huge difference to understand who you are and where you fit in the world. And so I'm going to just go over the basics of it's the Myers Briggs or 16 personalities. And then Justin mentioned the DISC, and it's a test you use often in business, an assessment in business. And it takes two parts of the 16 personalities or the Myers Briggs, more of a work focus. And then we also have one on there that's really important for couples. It's called love languages. And it's a real simple one. There's 5 love languages. And I personally always give the book about 5 love languages to anybody that's getting engaged or married, because it's just, again, too, it's critical that you know what makes you happy and what makes them happy. And often relationship problems happen. For instance, if you like, praise or love or affection or something like that, and your partner dislikes it when you take out the trash, they're showing you they love you by taking out the trash, and you're showing them that you love them by hugging them. But if it's not the right match of love language, you're both very, very unhappy and frustrated. And so again, too, it just really helps to, what do they say with cars, look into the engine or whatever to understand how things work. So now I'll just cover some of the basic personality types or traits that people have that really make a difference in understanding yourself and each other. And the first one we're a little more aware of because it seems like people talk about it a lot. And that's, are you an extrovert or an introvert? And we can often tell that extroverts are people like Justin. And actually, I'm an extrovert also. It's people that often talk a lot and tend to talk fast because we have so many things we want to say all the time. Extroverts love going to parties, being around people, playing challenging sports. And then the introverts sometimes get a bad rap, so they're shy, they're quiet, or something like that. But really, the introvert needs alone time to think and do deep dive thinking. Each type does its own thing and has its own way to energize and its own thing to offer. So the introverts are the deep dive people that are going to give you intense, deep thought, well thought out things. Extroverts tend to be more on the surface because we're just busy flitting from one idea to another. And one thing that I think is just super important for people to know about extroverts and introverts is it's literally wired in their brains. Extrovert brains and introvert brains are very, very different from how much blood flows through your brain, the path blood flows through your brain, and how many times it stops and what it does in your brain. And so a lot of people think they can become more of an extrovert by like practicing their social skills. But truly, we're only happy when we're doing what our brain has been trained to do. And I think a lot of people absolutely do not know that. And so that was one of the biggest points I wanted to make here and whenever I talk about it. And so the extrovert really has a unique quality. It gets like a hit of all the information of what's going on around you, sight, sound, taste, your basic touch. And so it gets a quick overview, like what's happening with me. And then it kind of makes one little loop and then it comes up with your problem solution or what it's going to say. And so that's why extroverts talk fast. They can talk a lot. They can talk quickly because they're constantly getting new information and it goes quickly through their brain and out through their mouth. I mean, it's a very direct path. Introverts, on the other hand, information comes into their brain. It literally circles through the entire brain, hitting all the major points of your brain. And so it takes a while before it to make that journey and then for it to come out. And so people think that introverts they talk slow or it takes them a while to get to the point. Their brains really are set up to take that deep dive. And the other interesting thing about it, so like extroverts, literally, when they're talking, interacting with people, doing a challenging activity, winning at anything, they get a shot of like dopamine directly into their brain every time they do that. So they're trained since they were babies that if I'm doing more and more of this, I get more and more of that exciting, happy feeling. It's almost like a rewarding drug, pops into your brain every time an extrovert's talking or winning or in a group. And then the introverts get their shot, their chemical built-in praise or shot of drug or whatever, whenever they think deeply. And so literally that's why you see the introverts are trained since childhood. They've learned that if I'm sitting and thinking about something, if I'm in a quiet environment so I can think optimally, my brain is going to constantly keep rewarding me. And we're not really aware of that on any level in terms of analyzing it in ourselves. But besides having a different brain and a different reward system in our brain, you end up with two totally different people. And so it's so important that we first understand which one we are and how we get energy to be who we are, and then to understand the other person and not judge, but look at, I need this person for that and this person for this. And also, when you meet people that you work with, it gives you a huge advantage, especially if you're in sales or marketing or anything involving people. Once you identify the types they are, you can more quickly then speak their language and interact and make a communication and make a relationship with them. And so people get bored sometimes with psychology or bored with personality things, but truly to make your work and your life move up to the highest level, it gives you like what I call cheat codes. Remember, my kids always had those in video games. So taking personality tests, and especially I like the Myers Briggs and the offshoots of it, gives you that cheat code or that special benefit that's going to help every part of your life be better. So yay introverts, yay extroverts. And then I also believe the brain is also related to the next set of options or types of people that we have. And that's when here you are ready to go. And again, too, remember that little shot of the drug or whatever that we get internally is where you get your energy. So it's like a computer or anything, you plug it in, you need energy to work. So your energy comes from being an extrovert or an introvert. And then the next thing is, so in our world, is this basically how do you think? Are you an intuitive thinker? We call it an N, or are you a senses-based thinker? So if you're an S, they call it, or a senses, you basically go back to what I'm seeing, tasting, hearing, and what I'm looking at. And so we call that five senses. So you pick up the world, your environment. And then the intuitive people, on the other hand, they're just constantly picking up ideas and thoughts, and the big things are just pouring into their brain using their sixth sense or their intuition. So again, too, now you have people that are just wired to be very different. And so again, learn which type you are, again, so you can take advantage of that throughout pretty much all aspects of your life. And the next area is, once you have information in your brain, do you analyze it through your feelings? And we have a lot of people like that too. It's like, if I say this, will it hurt their feelings? Or is this something that will help people be happier? You kind of evaluate all that information that's poured into you through how people will feel, how you feel about it. And then it makes you a kind of a warm, more feeling people that use that approach. On the other side are the thinkers. And so the thinkers more analyze it in terms of A equals B. They're the guys that come up with all the formulas, like spreadsheets, that sort of stuff. They're using their five senses and facts and getting things in that way. Again, two very different sets of people, very different sets of skills that you have a choice between who you are there. And then the last thing is like output, or what comes out of your mouth. What kind of ideas do you come up with? And so again, there we can have two very different types of people. We have people called perceivers. And again, too, they often go well with the intuitive thinkers who have a huge range of information pouring into their brain. The perceivers are the ones that then think big picture and think about how all these ideas and how to put them together. And it's good to understand about people that with that perceiving big picture thing, new ideas and new combinations of ideas are constantly popping into their brains. And they're the ones that can see patterns and things and kind of understand large amounts of data. And so what comes out of their mouths is usually more complicated, and it's usually more in depth, and they constantly come up with new ideas. Um, I personally recommend anybody who thinks like that, that's always kind of creative and thinking of new things, to always keep paper or your phone with notes on it at hand, because these deep thoughts are kind of popping up to you. Write them down, because they're there. They're like soap bubbles. They're gone. And so again, too, that's a different type of person for a different type of job, and it's going to be different in relationships. And then the other way people express the results of all their thinking and input and everything are the people called judgers, which is kind of an odd word. But anyway, it means they judge or evaluate everything that comes into their brain. And then they kind of want it again, too, down to the facts. And they want to think of plans or recommendations that can be implemented and not like pie in the sky, something 20 years from now. And so again, too, these are very different type of people. They look at all the data and they write down things that happen. The J's often go well with the introverts because they can take that deep dive and they can come up with plans, and then their plans can actually be implemented. So again, too, you need the big picture people to come up with like your 10-year goals, your 5-year goals, 25 ways to solve the problem. And then the judges are the ones that can then break it down into objective things that can turn into something that you can actually use in your life or in your company. And so, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's so important to know your own style and to know which one of these things you are, especially like, where do I get my energy? How do I think? What's the best environment for me to think? What kind of ideas do I have? And then what kind of results do I have? And so if you don't understand yourself very well, or if you think it's like cool to be an extrovert, because our society does reward extroverts, and so you try to make yourself into an extrovert, you can learn some of those behaviors, but it's going to take so much energy out of you that you're not going to be very productive and you're going to be exhausted at the end of every day. So again, too, that's why I really recommend taking some of these tests, learning about yourself. And so that, again, too, you can figure out you better. And once you understand you better, then you can look at a job before you take it, or look at the job you're in currently. I mean, if I'm an extrovert, do I have time to talk? Can I give big picture ideas? And if you're an introvert, it's like, I need some downtime. I need to keep my energy going. And my ideas are going to be more concrete, but you can use them. And one area at work is so important. If you've been to staff meetings, the extroverts love them. They wish they'd last all day. They love to come up with ideas. They love to negotiate. They love the give and take. They're super energized. And the introverts hate meetings. They want ideas. They want to present them, and they want a solution, yes or no, at that day. Extroverts could have meetings every day of the week. And so again, too, if you get tired of meetings or don't feel like talking in meetings, understand that's what your style is. And no judgment is a huge part of understanding yourself and other people. And then besides our jobs, understanding ourselves and then understanding our jobs, truly, to me, the most important thing we need to understand next to ourselves is our relationships. And so again, to understand who you are in a relationship and what you need. And so if you're an introvert who needs your quiet time and time to think, and you're married to an extrovert who wants to party every night, that's a tough relationship. I mean, you can learn to compromise and work on it, but you've set yourself up for a higher mountain to climb, to come up and balance that. And the same way, if someone has more concrete ideas, and if you're always talking all this pie in the sky stuff, that makes it hard. And so, again, if you're in a relationship and you take your personality test, don't leave it because you don't match ideally, but figure out and respect each other's differences, and think about your common arguments you have. How related are they to things like, are you an introvert or an extrovert, or different parts of your personality? And so again, too, that's one of the best points about knowing who you are and knowing who your partner is then you can actually work on it and end up with a better understanding and a better relationship. And I did, at the presentation, present data on which types, and we hear about them sometimes, ENTP and ENINJ and all those sorts of things, which types have the best chance of having a long-term relationship. And there's some types that have like an 86 and a 79% chance of having a good relationship. And then there's some that have getting down there around 10%. And often it's that extrovert versus introvert is the one over time that wears down, that you have to work on. And so again, too, if you want a better chance at understanding yourself and being happy and understanding the best job for you and the best job fit, and then finding the best relationship or working with the relationship you're in currently, the personality tests do a great job for that. And then just briefly, the test we talked about, the love languages, as one is, to me, is the simplest and easiest and the most directly related to relationships, if that's your main area. And then if you want that deeper dive, the Myers Briggs or 16 personalities is what is available on the website we're talking about, which is just basically making Myers Briggs a little easier to understand. It has like pictures and it has like an avatar for each type. And so it just gives you more in-depth information. And when you take tests on this site too, it does give you printouts of all the different things to help you understand this. So all the things I've been saying today, you don't have to like keep it in your mind and reanalyze it or rethink of it. They give you results that can help you make sense of what you're doing. And so if you want something for relationships, the love languages is best. And then you want in-depth understanding across all of them, then the 16 personalities or Myers Briggs is best. And then the disc is in between. It focuses on you at work and like leadership versus not leadership and things like that. And so again, too, the website is called understand.me. And so and right now it's free. As with all businesses, it's going to it'll obviously be monetized in the future. And then, so kind of rounding back to our CBDA, people take it again for anxiety and sleep and depression and things often related to your job or your relationships or how you feel about yourself. And it's always going to be good for all those things. But if you can learn your personality types, you have then taken away a lot of the stress in your life. So the website is understand.me.
If you're like a lot of cannabis executives that I speak to, you know the struggle. Finding the right talent in this industry is not easy. Hiring in the cannabis industry is complicated, and the traditional job boards just don't tell you everything you need to know about a candidate. Are they badged? Are they reliable? Do they really know their stuff? That's why the leaders at the top cannabis companies turn to Vanx. Vanx provides all the tools you need to make the right cannabis hires from one central innovative dashboard. So whether you're looking for an on-demand temporary employee or a seasoned executive, Vanx is your one-stop shop to find qualified, ready-to-go workers that are the right fit for your company. Visit Vanx.com, that's VANGST.com, to learn more about the Vanx gigs, vetted, and marketplace products, and to find out why they're proud to work in cannabis.
One of the things that I learned best is with understand.me is that for the longest time I struggled as an extrovert, and I took the 16 personalities, and obviously I was raised by a psychologist, so I was very interested in personalities and profiles and all these types of tests and really understanding yourself. And so the one of the things that I struggled with the most was why doesn't everybody see the world the way I do? Because obviously I'm very certain and confident and what have you, and I just kind of figured like, well, I've figured this thing out. Like I always have these like incontrovertible truths, and I'm the oldest of six, and I definitely took on a paternal role, and I wanted to help. And now that I have 4 children, I want to give them these like incontrovertible truths, right? And one of my incontrovertible truths is being a victim or blaming other people will not serve you in life. Taking responsibility for your actions, for your wins and your losses, and looking for that silver lining or that lesson and why something didn't work. And so again, I was building up my incontrovertible truths over life, and then I just figured like, okay, so this is the way that you can succeed at life or be happy. And as I started to understand these tests more, and they have a better battery of tests at understand.me, I started to realize that, and when you hear my mom talk about how the introvert's brain, literally the information travels around the brain in a different way, in a longer route, and they're getting energized by that thought coming out. Whereas with an extrovert, it's kind of more in the frontal lobes, and we get more of a dopamine hit. And it's we're wired differently. So there is no one way. There's no right way for anybody to perceive life. Obviously there's the nature versus nurture argument, which is, how much of it is your DNA and your heritage and your heredity versus how much is it your environment and your perspective and how much what's happened around you externally. And so again, the more of these tests that I took, I was like, wow. So you can, number one, understand that it's not that someone is either being lazy or tired or whatever that you might think as an introvert, that it's just the way that they process information. It's the way that they get energy. I also loved how my mom talked about introverts are like charging up your Tesla overnight. and you wake up in the morning and that one charge has to last you all day. There's no charging stations anywhere in a normal work environment. And so that introvert is saving that 100% energy, just like charging your phone, and you can't charge it throughout the day. You only can charge it when you get home and you can relax in your home, in your calm surroundings, and recharge your battery with sleep. And so when you understand that, it makes so much more sense to just understand people and be like, okay, and I'm an intuitive, as we talked about the 5 senses or intuitive, an N or an S in the 16 personalities or the Myers Briggs. And so I have to understand that when I'm talking as an intuitive. I figured that out, but now it's more concrete, is that when I'm talking to an introvert, and like, for example, Russel Brunson, he's an introvert. And so like when we're physically talking, or even on the phone, but mostly in person, when we're talking in person, I have to respect that I can see he's at an 85% charge, and I could talk all day long about all kinds of things, because I have all kinds of ideas to talk about with him. But I know that he has to reserve his energy, so I'll be really respectful. Like, I dropped off a whole bunch of Napoleon Hill books and artifacts and things this week in his office, and I had some ideas. I threw out 1 or 2 quick ideas of things that we were going to do or wanted to do, and then I could just sense, the energy, and I was like, okay, and then I got out. In fact, I did the same thing. I went and saw Ben Harper this weekend, and he was up here at Ojai, amazing venue, outdoor. And I'd met him backstage and had bought his guitar. We did a meet and greet many years ago. And it was the same thing. Like, I could sense that he was an introvert. And I could sense that he had just got done with the show and all those kinds of things. So I got in, we had a good conversation. I talked a little bit, but I was in and out in like 3 or 5 minutes. Could I have lingered for 20 minutes or 30 minutes? Absolutely. Could I continue to talk with the band? And I did hang out with the band quite a bit back then. But yes, but that's not what was best for them. And so as an intuitive, it worked out for me, but just to truly understand how people get their energy, how much energy they have, those things are so important. And especially if you're in a relationship, whether it's professional or whether it's romantic or whether it's even your children, just to best understand yourself and to best understand others, and how to best, get on the same page and make sure that both people's needs are being met, and that you're just, you're ultimately what you're trying to do is communicate, right? And finding that common ground, finding that best scenario platform to be able to exchange ideas and just get on that same page. So again, thank you to Mandy and Russell for having us out this week. Understand.me is the website. And it was such an amazing experience. I can't wait to see what comes from it. And it was just magical. So, Dan, did you have anything to add? I know you had a little spotty coverage earlier, but hopefully you can chime in here.
No, I'm back, and I'm fascinated, on the edge of my seat with everything Janet has to say. And you brought up a good point, Justin, about as a parent, you appreciate this even more. We have 3 kids, and each one of them are different, and each one of them energized in a different way and receive information in a different way and share information in a different way. And as a parent, sometimes you're like, oh, come on. But I love what Janet said. One question I had for Janet, though, before in closing, and I don't want to make this last any longer than we need to, but in most things in life, there's extremes. There's like at one end of the spectrum and then at the other end of the spectrum, but most people kind of fall somewhere in the middle. With extroverts and introverts, is that the case? Some people are extreme extroverts and some people are extreme introverts, but a lot of people are kind of a little bit in the middle. Is that the case, or is it one or the other?
Usually with the range, most people are pretty distinct, but not. There are people at the extremes. It's like the normal curve. You've ever seen it, the bell-shaped curve? There's a bunch of people in the middle, then there's people at both extremes. So that applies. And there's also a unique gift, actually, in any of those, like introvert, extrovert, if you are in the middle. If you're within 20 points, then you're in the middle. And in that chance, you actually have both. So you actually write it, your E and I, or a T and F. And it gives you a superpower, I call it, because you can adjust then who you are to your situation or your job demand, or to adapt to one of your kids or whatever. And so my E and I used to be close, and then my thinking, feeling are very close. so I can analyze things as a thinker, but I can also then keep in mind everybody's feelings while I'm doing it, so I can switch back and forth by my environment. If I'm working with a person as a psychologist, I'm going to be a feeler, and if I'm working in a big group or trying to problem solve, I'm going to be a thinker. And so that's a very good question. And so, like at understand.me, when you would take the tests on there, it's going to give you a bar graph for each of those. I'm this much E, I'm this much I, and a percentage. And so that really does help you understand. If you're just all over there on the E, you need to understand that versus if you're more in the middle and more flexible. It's a fascinating subject that you could talk about forever. But you're right, just day to day, besides our jobs, our main romantic relationships, and then our children. And children take a while to coalesce, although their brains are going to start out right away, introvert or extrovert. And so it's really important for you to watch your kids and figure out when they're all excited. And if you have an introvert, they tend to be, like Justin mentioned, I love the Tesla model, that they're conserving their energy to get through the day. And they can only get energy if they're alone somewhere quiet. And whereas the extroverts, we get low on energy, we just have to talk to somebody. And so like at the presentation, I had been listening for like 2 hours to a presentation. And so as an E, my energy was low. And so then when I got on stage, I could tell my energy was still low. So I said, ask your questions now instead of at the end, because any interaction is going to build me up. And so again, I really emphasize the point about our children. I was going cross country with my daughter, who acts like an extrovert. She's pretty and talkative and very social, but she's an introvert, and I constantly still keep forgetting that. So I'm like talking 100 miles a minute to her until I realize she's getting closer and closer to her door, and you can just tell that was not it. And so I constantly had to remind myself of that. So again, too, so work and yourself, figure that out. But like Justin was mentioning, really figure out your kids and make sure that you honor who they are and when they need quiet time and when they need time to talk. So again, too, I love this topic. Could talk about it forever. But anyway, and I was also so grateful, by the way, to have given that opportunity to speak before that huge and amazing group of people that are the 1%ers, the entrepreneurs from in the inner circle, and meeting Russel Brunson in that group. So thanks again. It was a great opportunity. And understand.me at the moment is free, so take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Well, I am so excited that you got to speak and that it all worked out. And it was funny, I was actually talking to Mandy Keene, who is one of the partners with Russell and is really the lead on this project or in this company, this initiative, understand.me. And I was at an event, Funnel Hacking Live, which is Russell's big event and every year that he does in person. Over like 5,000 crazy 1%ers show up to learn all the latest in online marketing and business and scaling, and personal development is a huge component of it as well. And I remember I ran into Mandy kind of backstage area, and we were just talking, and I had just to put it out there because I know Mandy's obviously a wizard and has worked with Tony Robbins and coached 20 years, and is just amazing. And she's also into health, and she's also into juicing and holistic healing and plant-based medicine and like medical medium. And so while we were talking backstage, I was like, oh my God, you got to meet my mom. She's like, psychologist of psychologists. She knows everything there is to know about personalities and people. Plus she's a health holistic healer, and we're all about juicing. And she was the one that guided the mission to get Shay healthy again with whole plant medicine, which no one at the time knew that if you juiced hemp or cold pressed oil, that was the ultimate superfood of superfoods that aligns all of the cells in the body to get back to neutral and to start healing. And so anyways, we were talking backstage, and I had just mentioned that, oh my God, you got to meet my mom, and if there's anything that you ever need help with, let me know. And then literally like 2 days later, she puts it out there that she needs help. And I reached out, and she was so happy to have my mom speak there. So she told me when we were up there in Boise, she was like, oh my God, Justin, you put it out there in the universe. That's so cool. And she's very wooed like I am and very connected. And we got to get her to do one of these readings when the day you were born. She's been telling me. I know Quinn, my sister, who was driving with my mom, has had her readings done. But there's another podcast episode for that. But apparently, the day you were born, there's some insights that you can find out about yourself that are quite powerful. I haven't personally had it done, but again, my sister Quinn has done it at least a couple times and says it's amazing, and Mandy has done the same. So I know this is a little off normal subjects here, but you know what? We had David Metzler last week, and he had some incredible insights. I know Dan asked an awesome question about vibrations, and that the highest vibration is the truth. So I highly recommend you check out the previous episode with David Metzler. That really blew me away. And look, we're on this ride, we're on this journey of life, and we're saying yes to the universe. And when Mandy asked for help, we said yes. You know, when David wanted to come on and talk, we said yes. And again, we're on a mission to heal the world, and that's reach 1 billion people by 2025. And it's not just about, raw hemp. It's about empowering people to take back control of their life, to take back control of their health. And if you don't have your health, what kind of life do you really have? So many people use our products for the first time, and they see that a simple plant can help with pain or inflammation or even a more complex health ailment, and then it opens up Pandora's box, like taking the red pill at Alice in Wonderland, and they realize that they are empowered. They are the ones that are in control, and not to give the control over to someone else. To educate yourself, to align with people that resonate at the same vibration that you're at, and continue to push your vibration higher, to find more people that are there for you, that are vibrating at that level, and that are pushing and helping and supporting you, and making sure that you're getting the absolute most out of your life. So again, I want to thank Dan and Janet for joining us on the Miracle Plant podcast this week. If you have any questions or want to learn more about yourself with these amazing personality profiles, remember to go to understand.me and get them filled out while they're still free. And we'd love to hear that works with everybody. At the end of every podcast, we say heal the world, because that is the mission here at Miracle Plant Podcast, is to heal the world because of what this miracle plant did for my son and helping his body and brain heal themselves. So on the count of 3, let's say heal the world. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Heal the world!
Woo!
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming by.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to PodConx.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jo, host of Casually Baked, the podcast. If you're curious to explore the highly responsible side of cannabis, farming, and legalization, I'm here to help lighten the stigma and build your canna confidence. Download episodes now of Casually Baked, the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And journey with me through the evolving cannabis culture and discover how and why people like you are adding cannabis to their wellness toolkit. It's time to get casually baked.
Miracle Plant Podcast.